Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast, the silly and serious shenanigans of two queer relationship coaches. I am your host, Elizabeth Cunningham.
And I'm your host, Lee Greeps.
On this podcast, we talk about how to live your best queer life with fulfilling, healthy relationships and anything else that makes your little queer heart happy. Because living your life outside of the heteronormative scripts is totally possible for you.
Each episode, we explore all things queer love from our professional perspective as relationship coaches, our own personal experiences, and as partners.
If you love our show, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships. You can also check out our website, www.queerloverelationships.com.
Thanks for following us and enjoy this episode.
How are we interacting with people who are showing us hate, but not continuing to create more divide? Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast.
Woo! I almost went to the old name. In my head, I was like, what? What are we?
What's happening?
Yeah. Actually, where am I? What year is this?
Great question. All great and valid questions.
Thank you. I asked the hard hitters.
What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the family, navigating family situations as we are at the end of the year.
End of the year.
Which usually means lots of gatherings or
Yeah.
interactions of sorts with people that probably you haven't interacted with a lot this year.
Mm-hmm. Or you have interacted a lot with them and now they're all individually and now they're all gathering together.
Yeah.
Which is a thing.
It is. It's like in chemistry class, you know, you have all the different elements and then you put some of them together and you're like, well, I just created an explosion. But individually, they were chilling, you know?
I think that is a great analogy for family. Individually, we're doing fine. Put us all in the same room.
Yeah.
It's not always the best.
Yeah.
If you do have and it's also like different pockets of family too.
Yeah.
As well, where it's like, no, if I'm with this part of the family or these people in the family, then like everything's great, fine, awesome, fantastic, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, some of these reactions, they make water. You know, and we need that.
And water is life.
Water is life.
Eau de vie.
Those are the nourishing pockets of the family.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And then you have the other part of the family that is not that. Mm-hmm. So when we say, I also want to, before we talk about this, just make it very clear that we're talking about when talking to family that is, how do I want to say that? Like, this doesn't apply if like you're not safe in your family.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're not saying go out and have conversations that are going to put you in harm's way. Mm-hmm. You know your situation better than we know your situation. We don't know you.
Unless we do.
Unless we do.
And if we do, hi. We're talking to you, Mama C.
Hello. But I want to, one of the things that I want to accomplish on this episode is, talking about the different philosophies or angles or points of view. I think that's what I want to say. The different points of view that you could come from in choosing how you want to navigate family situations, right? And I think especially this year after the election, this was a really big election in a lot of different ways. And it was very, I think our country is becoming more and more divided all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that this election really showed how polar the sides are. But I think it also showed, for me, it also showed how, yeah, I'm just gonna say it that way, how uninformed people are as well. And I think that when you're talking with people and you're having difficult conversations, there is an assumption of knowledge. Like there's an assumption that they know a specific thing that maybe is part of the reason why you're upset. Like, as you know, we're the queer love podcast, so maybe there's an assumption on your part that the people that you are upset with, or the people that you're going to have difficult conversations with in your family, did like voted against, you know, gay rights specifically, when and maybe they did. Like, I'm not saying that that's not the case. Like, some
it's a possibility.
Like some people absolutely did that on purpose, willingly, with all intention, consciously, with all intention. That is what they did. And some people didn't. Some people were like, oh, this is an economic thing, and you know, I voted because I think that the Republican Party has a better economic strategy than the Democratic Party. Whether that's true or not is a different story.
Yeah,
but that was like the intention behind it. And I'm not like excusing anything. I'm not trying to like justify anyone's behavior. Like, clearly it has, regardless of the intention, like the impact is important. And the impact is very real and very scary for queer people, regardless of what your family's intentions are. But going back to, you know, like having difficult conversations with family over the holidays, like I think that one point of view, like I said, I want to come from different points of view and look at these conversations from different points of view. And one point of view is that, you know, the people in your family have not done something that consciously to hurt you. Again, the impact is still real, not justifying anyone's behavior, but that is a truth for some people. And so when having difficult conversations, having those assumptions that like, oh, you did this consciously and on purpose, or you did so, regardless, I'm using the election as an example. It could be something completely different. But to come with the assumption that someone did something consciously and on purpose when maybe they didn't actually, like, that's actually just your assumption that they did something consciously and on purpose. And again, doesn't have to do with the election necessarily. It could be something that they said to you last time you saw them, you know, and they thought that was an okay thing to say, and it was not. Right? So understanding like that one point of view is looking at whether someone is doing something consciously or not, because then that kind of sets the ground for how you would approach that conversation. Like, if someone did something consciously and on purpose, that would be a different way to approach a conversation than if someone did something unconsciously and not intentionally, and bringing up that topic would be different, right? So it's just a different way that sets the foundation for something in a different scenario in which it sets up the foundation for something different, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one point of view to come from. What's another point of view? There's so many.
Oh, I'm like, I know you got a lot. I'm like, I don't know, what's another one? What's another one?
What's another?
Keep going. I'm over here still thinking about that one. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe like, well, I mean, yeah, I
guess we could keep going on that point.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking about that one in the. Yeah, I mean, like, as you were saying, and even at the start of it, with like not being informed, or like misinformed or uninformed or something, not informed, is. And I mean, like, yeah, you can use the election, but it's especially like just, you know, being, you know, maybe one of the very few queer people in your family are like the only person there that you know of or whatever. You know, and so it's like maybe having conversations about your relationships or you know, just the experience of you as a queer person. And it's like the questions that maybe get asked you or something that happens, and then you're just like, oh, they obviously did that intentionally because they hate me because of this reason or whatever it is. But yeah, and like just it's a very different experience to be able to open that conversation without the assumption being made, and to have like more of the curiosity too. Of like, what is that for this person? Or like, did you know that this is actually what's happening? Or like, this is what that actually means? You know, because that's often like that stuff like I've noticed like in terms of like different family dynamics. Like maybe someone says something and I'm like, all right, I don't think you know what that means. And so it's like I do. I'm just like, I'm just gonna. I try to make the assumption that they don't know. You know, like it's just like, okay, like let's check in. Like what when you say that, what does that mean? Like what do you think that means? And or yeah, like you chose this. What do you like how do you think that's like impacting me or queer people or whatever it is? Like what do you see as the impacts of that? And it's like, oh, I don't see any impacts. Like I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, well, okay. And so being able to just like kind of bring that like curiosity is like really important, just to like, because again, I mean, it does come to the fact of like the either uninformed, misinformed, of being able to share more with people if they're open to it, right? And it can like then make family dynamics a bit easier to have that.
Yeah, and like thank you for saying that, because that was one of the reasons why that was like the first thing that I brought up, is because that is like I think that's the best case scenario when someone just like legitimately doesn't understand or is not like, does not have like bad intentions. And then if you like come at it with the approach of like, hey, do you understand that? Like, do you know what that meant? Or like, or asking like, or like, what do you mean by that? Or like, tell me more about like that kind of doesn't sit well with me. So tell me a little bit more about like that for you. And I find that most of the time, and to remind everyone who doesn't know, I am from the Midwest, and not just with like family conversations, but just like, you know, interactions in general, coming from like Nebraska and Kansas, where people will say things that they think are totally fine, but are completely offensive. Yeah. And so if I got upset every single time that someone said something sideways to me, or like, you know, like a microaggression or something like that, I would be upset a lot. And I'm just not really committed to being upset a lot. Like, I just don't want that for myself. But I have found that in what Lee was saying, like that kind of approach of like, do you know what that means? Or like, what did you mean by that? You know, really de-escalates the situation really quickly, because a majority of the time, people are not meaning it in like an offensive way, even though maybe that's how it came across. And so it can be an opportunity to be like, oh, okay, well, you know, it actually means this, or just like understanding what they actually meant by it, right? They're like, oh, well, I thought this, and this. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that makes a difference in how I proceed in this conversation with you.
Yeah. Because you also have to think, and this is how I've seen it playing out in family, it's like you also have to think about the different generations, right? And like obviously, yeah, just different cultures and stuff, but like different generations and how they have like interacted specifically to like queerness. Because like even like that's been a conversation I've had with like the baby boomer generation in my family, of like just the word queer, because that used to like not be okay, right? And so it's like they're like, wait, you can say that, you know, kind of thing. And so it's like being able to talk about that, or just all the just different terms, and like what does this mean? Like,
Mhm.
I had a whole conversation about pansexuals one time. Like, they were like, I don't understand this at all. Like, they, you know, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, don't say what you said right now, but like, like, you know, like, it's just like being
Yeah.
able to talk about. But it is, I think that's like kind of the challenge I see a lot with like families too. It's just the different generations, and like how you were all raised in different contexts around queerness.
Mhm. Yeah. And the other thing that comes up for me in this is again, looking at multiple points of view here.
Yeah.
And one point of view from the person, the queer person side, is that you don't owe anyone an education,
Yeah.
right? And and um, you this is my point of view. My point of view is, no, I don't owe anyone an education, but I want to make my life easier, and like making my life easier means educating the people around me on who I am when it comes up. Like, I'm not gonna like stand up and give a TED talk, like
PowerPoint presentation
right,
at the
yeah,
dinner table.
and that's the thing, is that like it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to give someone like this massive education, like, in Lee's example about like the word pansexual or whatever. Like, you can just say like, oh, it's just people who love or are attracted to people regardless of gender. Boom, done. Explanation finished. And if people don't understand beyond that, that's okay. Like, I think one of the things that I've had to get used to, I guess, or like be at peace with, is not being understood. And I think for people who are like queer people who are generally misunderstood, like, it is kind of this push and pull between sharing what's true for you and letting people misunderstand you, and just being like, okay, like, I said my piece, you said your piece, okay. Which brings up another point of view, and this was something that I talked about with family recently, is when you have family members who are like, what we've been talking about so far is kind of like people who are, less conscious about what they're doing and like why it's like not appropriate or not good or even harmful. But what do you do when you have family members that are intentional about it, like are intentionally ignoring you, are intentionally saying bad things about you or to you, are intentionally doing things in other areas of their life, like voting, that they are intentionally I'm just going to keep using voting as an example because it's very top of mind for me. But like, they intentionally voted because they're like, no, gay people shouldn't have rights. They shouldn't be able to get married. They are lesser than, right? Like, they are fully consciously and intentionally doing that. And one of the things that, I talked to some of my family members about, because like, that's really hard. That is like, there's no two ways about it. That sucks. It sucks that there's people in your life that are intentionally doing these things. And one point of view with that is looking at it from a way zoomed out perspective. Like, okay, like 7 generations down the line perspective of like, how are we moving things forward regardless of whether or not we have family members who are intentionally doing harmful things. Like, that's one point of view. And inside of that point of view, like, some actions could be like not picking a fight with those people, like not actually letting them see you get heated about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like not, resorting to calling them names or like being mean back
Mm-hmm.
to them, right? And not because of, and that, and that, not that it's fair, but if we're looking at it from the point of view of like, how are we moving things forward as a community, then how are we interacting with people who are showing us hate but not continuing to create more divide? Because if they're showing us hate but and we're hating them back, like that just continues the division. Like division causes division.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if we're trying to move things forward, and again, I'm not saying like try and have like the most peaceful, Jesus Christ conversation with this person, Buddha conversation with this. That's not what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But what I am saying is, who are you being so that like as a whole and 7 generations down the line, we're continuing to move things forward. And everyone's going to have a different opinion about what you would do.
Yeah.
Like what that actually looks like. Very common example is like Martin Luther King Jr. versus Malcolm X,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Martin Luther King Jr. was very much like, meet it with peace, meet it with love, meet it with generosity, move forward that way. And Malcolm X was like, not on the same page, not on the same philosophy. It was just like, no, if people are, harming my community, I'm going to fight back, like, and physically and violently. Fight back. And again, I am like, this is a gross generalization of their, obviously Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X's philosophies about this are very nuanced. But like just the gross generalization.
Yeah. For example's sake.
And so I know that not everybody is going to agree with me. I tend to go the more Martin Luther King Jr., Jesus Christ, not that I'm a Christian, but like that route of like, love is the answer, like love is going to win the day. Like, even if it doesn't look like it in these specific conversations, even if that makes it seem unfair in these specific conversations. And this is the other reason why I think that too, is because in my life with people who have said shitty things to me, and I've met it with either just like being calm or peaceful or responding with curiosity or just calmly and simply explaining my side. Like, you don't have to be nice to these people. Like, I'm not nice to everyone who is, mean or disrespectful to me, but I try to remain like calm and peaceful and level-headed and be like, hey, this is why this wasn't okay. And this is what my point of view is. And you don't have to agree with me, but I need you to know that this is what's true for me, right? So I'm not saying like coming with love, like you have to be nice or, sunshine and rainbows. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, coming with love can also sound like very like calm, grounded, and just like, hey, this wasn't cool. This is what my point of view is. This is how you hurt me. And if you continue to do that, then I'm going to do this, and like setting a boundary. Like, that could also be like coming with love as well. Coming with love doesn't mean like butterflies and rainbows all the time. And the reason why I come from that perspective is because in doing that in my life, what has resulted is that sometimes, like years later, people will come back to me and be like, I really appreciate you having this conversation with me, and I've thought back about it a lot, and like I've changed my point of view on that. And I think that who you are being and speaking clearly and plainly and directly, like might not have an impact in that moment, but it has a lasting impact. Maya Angelou, like if the people will not remember what you said, they will not remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And if they think back to an instance where it's like, oh yeah, my queer niece or my LGBTQIA niece or, granddaughter or, cousin or whatever had this conversation with me, years ago, and I left that conversation or like who they were being in that conversation was like really blew me away, or like was like really calm or really peaceful, or like whatever. I'm using calm and peaceful as an example. It doesn't have to be that. It really makes a difference later on down the line, because they're like, oh, like that was someone who I disagreed with on this particular topic who was willing to be there with me. And again, it doesn't have to be like codependent, like, like over, like trying to solve for their emotions. It's not like holding their hand. It's not like walking them through something step by step. It really is about just who you're being. And the other reason why I come from this point of view is because you get to choose how you be in your life so that you feel good about who you're being and how you're being. And for me, what feels good about who I'm being and how I'm being is to, like, that has integrity for me. It has integrity for me to be, to speak my truth, I guess, in a way that I can really stand behind later and be like, no, I said what I meant, and I said it in a way that I feel proud of, and that's good enough for me. Or if I don't do that, like that I go back and remedy it, because I don't say everything perfectly every single time. And this last time I went home, I actually apologized to a friend of the family because I said something to them that like wasn't cool. I think that was more of a neurodivergent moment for me rather than a speaking my truth moment. It was more just like I said something that I thought was funny and it was not funny. But then I apologized later. I called them and I apologized. I was like, hey, like that wasn't cool of me to say. But again, like, sure, I did that for them. Sure, I did that for that relationship. But I also did that because that's who I want to be. That's the person that I get to sleep with at the end of the day every night, is me and my own thoughts, and my own feelings. And so really sticking to like what feels true and good for me right now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the other point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, anytime everyone will like hear like coming from love or, I don't know, kindness or whatever, like people think like the, roll over on your back, kind of be the doormat, like that's what being loving is. But it's like, no, like just being like the loving thing of, because kindness doesn't mean like you're just like, oh, I like, I hear you, I don't agree, okay, bye. Like it's like not like also like light and fluffy, like, because it's like that, just like the love and the kindness can be just like towards yourself and like being like you were saying, just like integrity. It's just like it's a very firm stance, but like it doesn't mean you're yelling at someone or like going off on someone too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that just often gets missed in like the strength of it. Like it's like people often think it's like, oh yeah, you're just gonna sit there and like that's that. But yeah, I mean, it always is just like what's going to have you feel aligned with your integrity and like what you want to create in your life. And what do you want to be known for? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to be like the rabid raccoon of the family, like just going off, or it's like it's just And I mean, it's hard to, because I know this is like something, especially in the queer community, like, and this is like even outside of family, but like it's like feeling like you are carrying the weight of the community in like who you are being. And so
Yeah.
it's like it takes away your humanity
Mhm.
in the sense of like, oh, I can't just be angry, you know, like I can't just like go off on someone because now there's gonna be like, see, every queer person is terrible, you know, like you're carrying that weight.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's like, yeah, it's unfair in that sense, because especially if someone is already in, you know, maybe a mindset that, you know, queer people are less than, for instance, right? It's like, well, you know, because yeah, my, you know, my cousin like said all these terrible things to my mom, you know, at the dinner table, and like, you know, and so it's like obviously all queer people, you know, it's like it's like, I had this one queer roommate in college and they were terrible, you know, it's like that doesn't then represent the, like, we, you know, we just do that in these marginalized groups, like we're just like, well, obviously that one person. And so it's like, it's also really hard in that sense too.
It isn't fair, but that is what happens.
Yeah, no, it's not fair at all. And, you know, and so it's like, I just definitely like, you know, get that with, you know, folks in the queer space of just being like, oh my God, I can't just have one bad day, you know, or maybe I do go off on someone or like, you know, say something or whatever in regards to them saying something like mean to me. And then it's like, oh, now they're like, oh yeah, see, you know, and so it's, but like you were saying too, just like being able to, you know, offer something back of like, hey, you know, that wasn't cool of me to like go off on you, like yell at you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that what you said, absolutely not okay to me. Like to say that to me, that's not okay. And you know what? Like I also am not, you know, I'm not the person that wants to just like go off on people. And so like I apologize for that part, right? Like I, you know, and so it's like you can make that distinction of like how I was being, like I apologize for that because like that's not who I am in like my integrity. And also the fact that this is what you said to me, also not okay, right?
Yeah.
You know, so you can make that distinction, and of course, you know, people will receive that in the ways that they receive that.
Yeah.
But you know, like it is just to like, you know, to allow yourself the humanity of it, and also recognizing too, like this is stuff that I like, you know, will do for myself or like with clients and stuff. It's like, you know, maybe in that moment, like you are in that kind of more grounded, stable kind of space where you know, and like you set a boundary or you just like remove yourself from the situation, and then you come into a space where it is safe to like feel whatever it is and to like let your rant go off or to like punch the pillows and, you know, to whatever it is, to release that like act, like where you're like, no, I was feeling furious and this is all the words I wanted to say to this person, right? It's like being able to allow yourself a space with like that, you know, compassionate witness, whether that's your like yourself or like, you know, with like another, to be able to be with that experience and to let that move through you so you don't get stuck in it also. So it's like it doesn't have to be right there, and you know, just what will help you to feel like in yourself and like in alignment.
Yeah, and this is not also like advocating for being perfect. Like
No.
I have certainly gone off on people.
No, like
I am, you know, absolutely. And you know, I was watching this thing the other day that was about like decolonizing conversations. That's not what it was called, but like that was like the like subject matter of it. And one of the things that I really appreciated about it was this what am I trying to say? Not talk, but I guess talking point of like that you do always have to be calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
Right? And so like I said that like for my integrity, I like being calm, cool, and collected, but that doesn't mean that that's like the best way to be, right? Like that doesn't mean that there isn't a time for being, I am a very fiery person. And so it's not like there isn't a time and a place for me to be fiery, right? But it is about choosing who you want to be in any given scenario. It's not saying that any way that, like, that's why I said, like, there's, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, like, I'm not saying that one is better than the other one. I'm just saying that who I choose to be and like what resonates with me is more in line with Martin Luther King Jr., right? Where it's not that Malcolm X wasn't totally valid and had some great philosophical points and that like that is like the wrong way to be, like that's not at all what the thing is. But it's like both people, both men were choosing to be that way. They surveyed what they saw and then they chose what they thought was the best solution, the best way forward, the best way to be about it. And I think that that is like really the heart of the matter. It's not about whether the way of being was right or wrong. It's about that they chose that was the way that they wanted to be about it. And they had a lot of conviction with that, and that is really admirable. And so I don't think that there is a right way to be, but I think the important part is choosing the way that you want to be about it. So that way you are coming with, not just in difficult conversations with family, but in any area of your life, that you're able to really stand behind what you're doing, what you're saying, because that's what you're choosing. That's what you're authentically choosing. And that at any point in time that you could change your mind, that you could see like, oh, this way of being that I've been being in this area of my life hasn't been working, hasn't been producing the results that I want. So maybe I should choose something different, right? And you get to do that. Like you get to have that choice. Or you choose to be a certain way about something and it goes wrong and then you apologize. You're like, wow. Like, and I think that apologizing is a part of standing with who you are. Like it's really standing with like, wow, I wasn't the person that I wanted to be, or I chose to be that way, but this wasn't the result that I wanted out of it. Like this caused something that I now feel sorry for, I now regret. And like having the humility to do that, I think is a really beautiful act of like self-love and integrity and like allowing yourself to be human in whatever it is that you choose to do. So this is not about like choosing the quote unquote right way to be with the people in your life. This is about choosing the way that you want to be about it and then standing behind that, whether that's standing behind it being like, nope, I said what I said, or like a combination, right, of what like Lee just said, where it's just like, nope, I said what I said and I'm, I did not mean to, hurt your feelings or, whatever it was.
I didn't want to raise my voice or whatever.
Whatever,
something like that,
Yeah, exactly. So it's not, like I was telling a client the other day, I was like, I don't want to get rid of your fire. Like I'm not trying to coach your fire and your passion out of you. But instead of burning down the entire forest, I want you to have more of a controlled burn.
Yeah.
Like I want you to be like a fire wielder, not like a fire bomb. Right? And I think that that's a really important distinction. Yeah. So in having these conversations, in going into these, scenarios with family or with people that you normally don't interact with or wouldn't always choose to interact with on a regular basis. Part of the way of like choosing who you want to be is also looking at how have you been being in these situations? Like, have you been being timid and scared and like not doing things in a way that like really makes you feel proud? Or have you been being the fire wrecking ball and coming through and burning down the entire forest? Like and now you want to be more of a controlled burn. Like, what is the way that you have been being about this? Because that's also the other part of this too, is that when you're choosing a new way to be about something, there's the how you have been being is, first of all, individually hard to break out of in specific environments. Like, you go to your family and then all of a sudden you're in this environment, like at your grandma's house, where you find yourself saying things that, like, saying or being a way that, like, doesn't feel authentic to you, but since you're at your grandma's house, it's like that's how you always are there. So individually it's hard to break out of those patterns, and it's also hard for other people to see you break out of those patterns too, because there's now an expectation of how you behave. Right? Like, people expect you to behave a certain way. So that's also another reason why it's challenging to be a different way, is because of the environment and the expectations that people have of you. So it does take a lot of courage to decide to be a different way about something, you know? And I think my number one, I'm going to give advice, even though advice is not always, you know, very helpful or useful. But like, a major pitfall that I see with people who are breaking out of the mold of like how they used to be and now they're being a new way around people is that you make the assumption that people aren't going to like it. So you have a tendency to be more defensive. And I offer to you that you can be this new way without having to defend this new way of being, because you don't know how it's going to be received. People might be really happy that you're being that way, you know? It might be well received. And for the people who don't receive it well, it's also, when you're trying on a new way of being, it's also learning to let go of the people-pleasing tendencies of like wanting people to agree with you, right? Like, letting go of the need or the care or anything like that of how people are going to receive it, and just being this way for you, right? Being peaceful for you, being confident for you, being fiery for you. And just being like, okay, and then people are going to receive it how they're going to receive it, right? And I'm saying this in a very nonchalant way, but this is a really big deal. Like, when you choose to be a different way around people who expect you to be a certain way.
No, I mean, especially with family, because it's like, I mean, it is like, you know, especially if it's like family that you've seen on a regular, you know, growing up, like, it's like your parents or your siblings or your grandma, or, you know, not like the long distant cousin who you saw like once every 5 years, like, but it's like, you know, people that you were like, you were in a play with, basically. Like, everyone had their role, and so it's like, it is that thing of, well, you know, because sometimes it's like, oh wow, I love that you are, you know, maybe your mom's like, oh my God, you're being so much more confident, I love that for you, versus like, you know, your brother is like, absolutely not, because then you being more confident is like then having to change his role, because like that's what has, like, when you change, someone is like, well, what do I do now? We used to always just like bicker back and forth, and you're not bickering back and forth with me now, so what do I do? And so they attack, maybe, or they are just like, they just avoid you, and you're like, what, I want to still talk, you know, like, it's like all those things. Then, you know, and then of course it's just, family is such a specific thing, because it is like, that's where the wounds are, that's where the patterns are from, like, all of that is happening all at once, you know, and then they're getting confronted with the changes that you have made, and they're like, I don't know how to relate to you anymore, because I don't know how to relate to me in this situation. Like, I'm always the one that does this, you're the one that does that, you're not doing that, what am I supposed to do, right? And everyone can have their own reactions to that. And so it's a lot to do all in that space, So of course, yeah, like not striving for perfection,
Mhm.
or and just being with like the, just the other part of it is like being with the discomfort that comes, where it's like, oh yeah, like, I like you were in integrity with like who you want to be, but you saw how that upset your aunt, for instance, right? And you're like, then you feel the discomfort of like, ooh, like maybe you had those people pleasing tendencies, and so you're like, oh man, now she's really upset with me. Like, am I okay? Da-da-da-da-da. Oh my god, now she's gonna get mad with my mom, and da-da-da-da. Like all of those things. That is what has kept us in those roles, right? Like that's why we do it.
Mhm.
And so it's also just the part too of like where you're like, what? But I was doing the thing of being myself and in integrity, but it feels not great. It's like that doesn't mean it's bad. It's different. It's new. It's unfamiliar, and so it's just like it's just the discomfort of like, oh, well, this is a sticky situation, but like
Right.
also I feel good with who I was being, right? Like, and you can check yourself, of course, be like, wait, was that okay? You can check and be like, oh, no, like that's good. Yeah, I definitely feel that part of me that's like, no, 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 you better go fix that. Like, and that's like, that's the fear part, right? So it's like all of that can be happening, and like really just like allowing yourself to be uncomfortable, knowing that it's okay if it's like in line with like your genuine self integrity, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. But like the power that then comes from like being like, yeah, like I can be my genuine self, and act and choose in who I am being. And it also just like helps you to gather evidence for yourself that that's possible and that you're okay in those situations. Like your aunt's pissed
Totally.
off at you, well, but you're alive still. See how that works? Like, but it helps you in that space, and also that like everyone who's witnessing that, whether they're the ones pissed off at you or not, but like everyone who's witnessing that, like there is that like power from that. Like your little sister might be seeing you say that, like into your aunt, and just being like, oh my god, dude, what? Like, I can do that too. Like it's giving,
Mhm.
like the inspiration for other people, the permission for other people to do as well. Like,
Yeah.
and so there is, yeah, like there's just a lot of power. I just like, and that's like the trickle down effect, like you were saying, like, a few years later, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, yeah, you did this thing, and it was like wild. But yeah, so just like recognizing all of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, you don't know the impact that you have on people. Good, bad, neutral.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. And I also saw this thing the other day that was like, if you're being more authentic, it doesn't mean you're being more likable.
Mm-hmm.
And people will like you more.
Yeah, just be like different people.
But different people, because you are being more authentic. And I think for me, one of the things, two things that I wanted to say. Number one is that when you do this, like when you change your way of being, when you say the thing that you had been afraid to say, when you have a different conversation with a family member, when you don't fall into your normal pattern of behavior, because you don't want to, like having a debrief conversation with yourself, or maybe with a friend or a partner, or even your therapist or coach, or whoever is supporting you, and having like a little debrief conversation about like, okay, what worked about that, what didn't work about that, like having that grounding conversation, excuse me, or regroup, or even journal session with yourself afterwards, is going to do a couple of things. One is that it's going to have you feel more grounded, because it's probably going to feel, you might have a little anxiety for doing something new and different. It's also going to help uh, like ingrain that behavior as well, like the stuff that did work, right? Because then you're like talking about it and being like, oh yeah, that really did work to be confident instead of timid, or to be peaceful instead of angry, or to be angry instead of passive, like whatever it was, it like, oh yeah, that actually did work for these reasons. And it's also good to, write down what didn't work. Like, okay, what didn't work about that is that I upset my sister, and that was not my intention to upset her. And so what do I need to do moving forward, or what conversation do I need to now have with her? And just like kind of saying what didn't work, and like how you're going to either make amends if that's appropriate, or what you're going to do differently in the future, right? And maybe upsetting your sister was actually a good thing. Who knows? And then the other thing too is that, so that was the first part. The second part is just like for myself. I try to remind myself of this, because I think my default way of being is that I do like being liked, Everyone likes being liked, it's good to belong, it's good to fit in, it's good to be liked by people. But in doing this work, what I've discovered is that I would actually prefer being respected. And what I mean by respected is, like, I want to behave in a way where even if people don't agree with me, they still have a lot of respect for who I am. Because they can trust me to, even if they don't agree with me, even if they don't like me, they can still trust that I'm going to show up and be me every single time. And that's a really respectful thing to do. And so just for me personally, I've learned that about myself and about what I want. And I've learned that over time and over experimentation and over, like, trying different ways of being that I thought would work, or that I thought that I wanted to be. At one point in my life, I thought that I wanted to be more angry. I thought I like really came out of the gate swinging anytime that I needed to. And what I discovered out of that is that it caused me and other people a lot of unnecessary grief and pain. And I was like, wow, I thought that I wanted to be that way because I'm a very passionate person. But I realized that, I don't want to be the person that causes that much pain. Even if I feel like I'm right about something, I really don't want to cause that type of pain. And so I'm going to do something differently. And so, like, having that awareness and self-reflection, like, even if at the time, because at the time when I was being more angry, I absolutely thought that that was the best way to be, and that I was absolutely right and justified in being that way. But then eventually, hindsight 2020, I was like, wow, that really did. That caused a lot more pain and destruction than I am proud of. And I would rather be someone who, like, how do I want to say that? I would rather be someone who has more integrity and is more concerned with the ripple effects of these situations than being right in the moment. And that's just something that I've discovered and learned for myself. And so, like, and who knows, in 10 years from now, I'll probably look back on this particular time and be like, oh, there's an even better way that I could be about that. But that's just life. We continue to learn and grow. But I think it's important to have that, like, after you shift your way of being, to have that time to self-reflect. Yeah. Boom. Anything else you want to say or share?
No. Anything for you?
No.
Okay.
I love you. We love you.
Love you.
We love you. We believe in you. We want you to win.
So do it. Okay, bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Queer Love Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships, or email us at queerloverelationships@gmail.com. If you are interested in working with us, follow the Linktree link in the show notes. See if our offers resonate with you. And if they do, sign up with us or book a discovery session. We are so grateful that you're here, listening, learning, and growing with us. Until next time, keep loving.